Hello, and welcome to Invisible Threads, the podcast where we unravel the complexities of the supply chain world. I'm Partha, and in today's episode, we are diving deep into demand driven material requirements planning, which is popularly known as DDMRP.
And I'm Anurag. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Milan Gupta to our podcast. With 2 decades of experience in supply chain management, Milan is a recognized expert in DDMRP. Milan, welcome to the podcast, and our listeners would love to hear from you.
Thanks. Lovely to be on this show.
Welcome. How we will do it today is we'll start with the basic understanding of DDMRP so that our listeners have the understanding of the topic. So, why don't you start with explaining what DDMRP in simple terms for our listeners who might not be familiar with it right now?
All right. Okay. So that's a tough one, but let me say it as following. DDMRP is a flow based planning method. Now, what is flow based? It's actually demand driven in the sense the materials move under DDMRP methodology only as per consumption, actual consumption. So what gets sold
Okay.
gets pulled from the previous node, and what moves from the previous node creates the signal for pull from the previous to previous node. That's essentially the flow based methodology. That's what DDMRP is uh, in the whole sense. So that's,
That's nice.
yeah. How do you like that now?
So,
Go ahead, but
why don't you like
that's not easy
explain?
to understand.
So that that's not easy. So I'm trying to decipher that. So I'll ask a follow up here there. So what do you mean by pull, and what do you mean by flow?
Yeah, and then again, Milan, also don't forget about the nodes, right?
Yeah.
So you did mention the nodes. So I think these terms are a bit alien in terms of DDMRP for us. So if you can explain those as well,
Okay,
that
node.
would be great.
Good point. Nodes, what I meant by nodes was location. Let's say a location, physical location, may be a warehouse, or it could be a product number, a location on a bill of material. So if you have a complex bill of material and you could pull from some intermediate material, and that intermediate material get signals, send signals of pull to the raw material. So a node, the word node, well, it
Hmm.
also means a decoupling point, but let's stick to node. Node basically means a location on bill of material structure or a warehouse location. But yeah,
Okay.
that's a simple one. I'll come
That's
back
nice.
to
Nice to
Anurag's
hear.
question, which was
Yeah.
push and pull.
Yeah.
Now, there are many definitions between a push and pull. You ask 10 consultants what's the difference between push and pull, you'll get 10 different answers. Now, let's go with what DDMRP follows. Now, of course, the word pull is not specific to DDMRP.
Hmm.
Now, push generally means a forecast driven planning, which means that you're making products based on forecast and then you're pushing it ahead from the factory to the warehouse, pushing whatever you're making, you're pushing it ahead to the warehouse, and then from there you're pushing it further, irrespective of whatever the demand or anything is. You're pushing it to the retailer's end. That's a push thing. Or even coming from the raw material side, um, you're pushing materials from raw material to the shop floor. Why? Because the machine is idle, there is capacity available, so you will make more, you will push material into the shop floor. So that's what push approach means. Not moving goods according to a consumption driven, but according to a mainly according to a plan or a forecast. A plan may have been made like a month ago, which may not be valid even now, but you'll keep pushing things according to that plan. Now, so that's what push means. Opposite of that is pull. Um, Another definition is, which I like about pull,
Hmm.
is, and this is from the very famous operations management book called as Factory Physics. I don't know. Have you guys heard of this book, Factory Physics?
No, not yet.
No, Milan.
All right, it was an award-winning book from and informs the world famous Operations Management Society. They give lots of awards, Franz Edelman Award, and these. So anyway, they also gave an award to this book. Now it explains these concepts very very simply. They introduced laws of manufacturing, like F is equal to ma for second law of Newton. Now that's how they introduced laws of manufacturing, which have been proven. So they call definition of pull, which as I said I like a lot, is a cap on inventory, WIP inventory or raw material inventory or finished goods inventory. So you will not have, under a pull system, you will not have WIP more than 2 days on the shop floor. And therefore, you will not be able to push material because the cap has already been reached. This is what Toyota system follows under Kanban. So if you have reached the level, the Kanban cards, so you can't pull anymore. So it's essential in all of these pull philosophies. You will see what is common is to get a signal when not to work. And this is a
Okay.
little radical. Most of the times you are forced to work if the machine is idle, irrespective of demand, or if the warehouse is a little empty, push it there. But in a pull signal, if you have a signal which is saying do not work, I mean, you have reached a limit, you are supposed to not
Hmm.
work, irrespective of space available or capacity available or anything. Did I confuse you enough?
So Milan, speaking for myself at least, I am a bit. So now when we talk about demand driven, so is it the pull or the push?
Pull,
Yeah.
So
largely
that
pull,
could be one
yes.
of the differences between, let's say, traditional MRP than the DDMRP. But tell us about the other differences where the company should look at between those traditional ways of planning materials than the DDMRP.
Okay, so I will not get into the nitty gritties of what is a DDMRP method and what is a
Hmm.
solution, and it won't be worth. It can't be done in a such a short session. But I'll tell you the spirit, the philosophy.
Okay,
Okay.
So
sure.
companies, they should adopt DDMRP if they are looking for clear financial benefit in a short time, maybe six
Okay.
months, maybe 3 months. Very significant benefits, sustainable benefits, and a competitive edge. So I would put financial benefits first. It's extremely results driven. So it's not like DDMRP is about a system going live, SAP going live, Kinax is going live, Anaplan going live, or and then you go
Mm-hmm.
home.
Hmm.
It's not that. You have to talk in the DDMRP world about results, that we want to increase sales. Supply chain people don't talk
Okay.
about increasing sales, but you have to. It's a holistic philosophy. So how can supply chain help sales improve, and therefore in turn help revenues improve, and therefore profit improvement? And likewise, how can supply chain people reduce inventories without loss of sales, and therefore improve on the ROI? So whole philosophy is extremely results driven. You need to be uh, ambitious about getting financial results very quickly. So such companies should adopt DDMRP. If companies are they want to implement a planning system, world's best planning system, oh, you're not going to like DDMRP so soon. Are you looking for profits?
Okay.
Okay. So Milan, if I understood correctly, you're saying that okay, DDMRP is a thought process, and not essentially a particular, say, tool that gets implemented, right? And then I think so you have summarized, but would also want to know more. I mean, like, once, say, a company gets into, say, sort of implementing DDMRP in their entire process, how do they benefit of it? I know you talked about the financial benefits that you get, but
Mhm.
in terms of specific supply chain metrics, if we talk about, what would be those, and then how they get impacted?
Okay. So the supply chain metrics, which are of importance, and this is where a sort of balanced scorecard approach comes in. Um, so,
Okay.
balanced scorecard approach is that all the metrics should be tied together, and there should not be too many metrics. By the way, uh, companies have just too many, like 30, 40 metrics being monitored. Just so many don't matter. Anyway, so even
Yeah.
the financial ones have to be connected with the supply chain metrics, Partha, which you mentioned. In fact,
Okay.
the supply chain metrics should be directly connected to the financial ones. So the ones which really cause a revenue improvement are the customer facing metrics, which is service level, availability, due date performance. These are the metrics which matter to the customer. The metrics which do not matter to the customers, we should not be worried about. So, asset utilization improvement. Customers don't care
Mm.
if your asset is being fully utilized or not. So, so that metrics takes a lower importance. It's not ignored, but it gets a lower importance. In any case, the if your sales are improving, even eventually your asset utilization would improve. But so the supply chain KPI, which you were asking, so availability, due date performance, OTIF, inventory turns. These are the metrics which improve, and they improve
Yeah.
greatly.
Okay.
So, let me give you an example. If you were to measure the on time in full of most companies, if you ask verbally, casually, any supply chain manager, what's your due date performance or on time in full to your customers? Many people will say, well, we are good, we are doing pretty fine, 70%. But really, when you come down to measuring it, so when you put a strict measure that on time and full means you are delivering to the customer number of orders that you are delivering to the customers on original promise date, original, not the revised, because you keep revising every time. So on the original promise date, and not one day late and not one item less. So that's the
Okay.
strict measure. Now, if you put that measure, you'll find that people at 27%, 31% of on time and full. So
No.
now, once you've implemented DDMRP, so exactly this due date performance will go from 21% to easily above 85%. Inventory turns, they go from they at least uh, twice twice increase. I mean, it can double the current rate, which is a big deal.
Okay. So Milan, coming to our initial discussion of that push and pull, right? So do you think that, okay, DDMRP is more suited? I'm deliberately using the word more suited for a particular industry type, or it's sort of, applicable for, say, all the industry type. And why I ask that is, maybe, and I'm not very sure, but maybe the strategy of push would be more helpful for a particular industry, or at least for a particular company of a particular size, and not the pull strategy. So do you think that, okay, we can differentiate, based on that as well, that, okay, DDMRP is more suited for a particular industry and not others, or any such categorization,
So there is no
if you can think of?
industry. I no, again, how do I put it? The original objective, as I mentioned in the beginning of the session, is financial, money making,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Making money, more money now and in the future. I don't know any company which doesn't have this objective, any industry which doesn't
Hmm.
have this objective. So tell me, for example, tell me a company which is entirely push, and I'll tell you they have implemented DDMRP. I'll give you examples of companies in from that industry which would have implemented DDMRP. Okay, so let me let me take few
Let,
names.
yeah, let's take some examples from CPG or retail, let's say, because
Uh-huh.
they are the ones which we typically see depending on the forecast more often
Okay,
than a
so
pull system. So that
how
would be
about
interesting
PNG?
to know.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
PNG has implemented DDMRP. Of course, not worldwide. They're expanding.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, how does J&J sound? How does Unilever sound?
Okay.
Interesting. Like I was not aware that
A lot of
Unilever
it
is
is
looking at.
secret now, but then I can give you reference why PNG has a corporate
Uh-huh.
account on Demand Driven Institute website. Unilever
Okay.
case was mentioned in one of the DDMRP's papers. How about fair share? How that logic was refined.
Okay.
So yeah, there are tons of companies. BSH in Europe, they are like appliances
Uh-huh.
company, very big.
Yeah.
They've implemented SAP IVP, their DDMRP on IVP. So
Okay.
they're doing very well, and they're winning awards. I'm
Okay.
giving you CPG
So,
companies.
Mil, like, can you give us a use case or an example, a real world example where this has been beneficial for those type of customers, if you can.
No, no, of course I can give, but I didn't catch the question. So just come again. I couldn't hear you clearly, Anurag.
Okay. So, okay, I was asking, like, if you can give some real world example or the use case where they have specifically implemented this and benefited out of DDMRP.
All right. So I can give you like so many examples. I'm thinking which one should I give? Which one should be the best?
Okay.
Um, Let me give you the example of. Okay, so there are these companies in US, Oregon Freeze Dry. Then there is Letorno
Hmm.
Technology. It's like Caterpillar. They make
Yeah.
these equipments, heavy
Right.
earth moving equipments. They used to,
Earth moving. Yeah.
yeah, long back, and this implementation was long back. So Dan
Okay.
Eckerman, there's here, it's a multi-billion dollar. It was a multi-billion dollar company. It got acquired recently. Um, they their results were so good that the CEO Dan Eckerman, he wrote that we should have been doing this thing for a very long time. Now I don't remember the metrics of this company, but the testimonial by itself should speak.
Yeah.
Um, Coca-Cola South Africa, they have said, in fact, ArcelorMittal Brazil, they have said that they have saved around, and on video, they have said about $17 million in inventory.
Okay.
So
Good.
yeah, I mean, and there's so many. How do you'll have to stop me because I can keep going on.
No, no, this was very interesting. So I would like our listeners to understand, like, how this has been beneficial for other companies, because the next question and the next section we are uh, diving towards is how do those company takes initial steps. So if we know what's in it for the company, then we dive deeper onto
Yeah,
how the
no,
companies would implement.
yeah, no,
Will
I'll
will
just take a
I will
pause here
I'll let you
on
speak.
this, Anurag. The money is
Hmm.
damn good, as I'm telling you.
Okay.
You can see, it's extremely
Hmm.
good. There's no reason for the sake of money why companies should not go for it. But then there's a
Yep.
philosophy which is difficult to imbibe. The One of the
Yeah.
core philosophies is about people. It's extremely people driven. It's not technology driven. Technology is supporting, but
Hmm.
it's people driven. It's not mathematical optimization at all. And
Okay.
Okay.
one of the very core things about DDMRP, at least I try to, impress upon my clients, that you will not blame your people. People are good. whatever they are not trying to destroy your company. So nobody is lazy. It's just your metrics, and metrics drive behaviors. It's your metrics which are driving
Mm-hmm.
them towards an unproductive activity. It's your own metrics. So a very core philosophies. Um, so there are great consultants, DDMRP consultants as well. Some of them, and theory of constraints consultant, which is very similar, who
Mm-hmm.
lay this condition on clients that you will not lay off people when I'm giving you these results. Um,
Oh.
I mean, I will reveal capacity. I'll make sure you start
Mm-hmm.
producing much more. Then you'll start wondering, oh, I have too many people, but then you will not lay them off. There are so it's a first of all imbibe that philosophy.
True.
People, it's because of people you are going to get those results. So start
Correct.
listening. We'll help you listen to your own people, and that's how the results will come. Which is why money is very good, but it's a philosophy which is difficult to imbibe, adopt.
True. True. Yeah, we even have seen people being skeptical about when the lean concepts came, when they wanted to adopt those concepts on supply chain planning or a supply chain management as a whole. People were initially skeptical about it. I'm sure if they listen and understand more about DDMRP, um, their skepticism would go down for sure.
Mhm.
So,
I don't know. I
coming to
don't know. So I'll just take I'll before we just move
yeah,
on. It's not about skepticism. Um,
okay.
uh, Now everybody knows going to a gym will yield good results. Okay,
Yeah.
but they don't, and even I don't. Um, I know it's good. I know I'll get a lot of benefits, but it requires a certain discipline, a way of
Yeah.
following the trainer for at least little while before you can be on your own. It requires a bit of a faith,
Hmm.
and so likewise for DDMRP, the knowledge is out there in public. Everybody has the knowledge, just like everybody has the knowledge about gyms are very good. Knowledge doesn't help. It will not reduce skepticism unless you give it a
Okay.
shot for
Hmm.
about 2 3 months, 6 months. Do a pilot, do a simulation. You're not going to be convinced about it. So you have to taste the
Okay.
results, initial results, in order to want more, and initial results can come very quickly. So I'm skeptical of skepticism going soon.
Okay.
Got your point. No, that's a very interesting way to look at it. So, if we think about companies, how do they start on this journey? How do they see the pilots showing some results? Where do they start? Let's say.
Uh, so one of the best ways is engage a person who knows DDMRP and then commit to it, because this is going to be a little long. Don't do a trial and error. So show some
Okay.
sort of a commitment, even if it means some sort of an education, investing in education or awareness sessions, 1 day awareness session, or maybe 1 week, session. Start investing in knowing more, not just doodling and calling consultants. Hey, can you give me a presentation 1 hour? It won't help. Put your money, little bit of your money, just like going to gym.
Mm-hmm.
Start, put 1 day, then go for the 1 week, because there are programs which will which
Yeah.
can initiate people into this. But that's one direction. Second direction is get somebody to show you a mirror, which is that you your inventory turns and your due date performance and your inability to meet your promises exists in a on a very large scale. It's probably hidden from you
Okay.
yourself, or
Mm-hmm.
you want to see the potential, first of all, that if I'm able to increase my due date performance to 95% and uh, whatever very high number, or
Yeah.
availability to near 99%, my
Mm-hmm.
sales will indeed grow. go up by around 30%. At least you have to start imagining that,
Okay.
and that will drive you towards a superior, knowing a superior system. You won't implement it right away, but at
Mm-hmm.
least it'll make you curious about, oh, well, DDMRP can do it. Let me start studying DDM. Then you'll probably start investing one day or one week, so on and so forth. So
Okay.
one of the first things that I recommend to people is get aware of this, your nature of your problem. There is a problem, a big problem that we are trying to solve, not everyday small little
Mm-hmm.
problem. There's a big problem to solve, or there's a big money to gain. So let's get on to that agreement, start with
Okay.
that, and then from there onwards everything goes on. The change, as I say this often, you
Uh-huh.
should be ambitious for the results. You are really, really results driven. So, and but so many people are not, and they're probably looking for just 5% improvement in profit. You
Okay.
want much more and sustainable. So start with that, start
Okay.
articulating, verbalizing that, and then things will start.
Okay. So just piggybacking on the same analogy which you used on gym. So often people ask the question, I'll lose some weight for sure, but how long does it take for me? Right? So how long typically it takes to see those tangible benefits for those companies out of this exercise? Typically.
uh, I'll give you an answer, you won't trust it. uh,
Okay.
Now, since it's not so much of course it's supported by technology. Since it is
Mm-hmm.
not so much technology driven, it's more of a thoughtware first. The results are almost, the first brush comes almost immediately. Like within first 2 months you can see
Mm-hmm.
your revenue, your profit going on an uptick. So I'll give you an example. So once long back, when I was doing such a similar implementation, um, in the first month of implementation, my client got a revenue which they had not seen in the last 8 years. In the first month, monthly revenue, and
My
the
goodness.
result was why that happened. Basically, because they had too much of backlogs. So there were backlogs were just rotating, rolling from one month to another. So backlog would just remain constant, and they were firefighting. So when this implementation was done there, the firefighting got reduced almost immediately. There was much more order to the system. Their backlog started clearing. Now nothing else happened. Just the backlog started clearing. So therefore, on the first month, their revenue just shot up like impossible to believe. And of course, from the second month onward, they were back to normal, a little bit better because the customer service improved. But on the first month, the revenue was unbelievable. So the results are almost instantaneous because you are suddenly talking about things which matter. You're stopping the nonsense. You're telling people not to make. People are happy not to make nonsense. They're just making because their bosses are telling them to make it. So
Okay, that's good to know. So Milan, I mean, you mentioned that okay, technology is an enabler here. So would also want to understand. I mean, what kind of software or technological tools are necessary for DDMRP implementation, if at all they are required?
yeah, of course they are required. It's necessary, but not sufficient.
Okay,
Technology is necessary. It's not that you can do
okay,
DDMRP without technology. It is necessary. But
okay,
you need much more. So for DDMRP, now give it depends on the scale. Now, if you're planning to do just a proof of concept, Excel is good enough. If you want to do a pilot,
okay,
or maybe few just a few plants and just a one location, there are software, mid-range softwares which are available. However, if you're a global company and you have done proof of concept, you have done simulation, you have done pilot, now you want to roll it off across, then you want to look. have need something like an SAP IVP or Anaplan or things like that. Um, so, but you can start on an Excel.
Okay. So it's interesting that you mentioned the term IVP. So I was just wondering all this while. I mean, how does DDMRP and IVP say, relate to each other? Uh, I mean, or these two are entirely different. If you can help me
Okay, so
understand.
when I use the word IBP, I did not use it in the sense of the concept called IBP. I use it
Oh,
in
okay,
the
okay.
sense of proper noun IBP, which is SAP IBP. Is the
Okay,
name of the
okay,
uh, SAP software. So I'm not promoting SAP IBP. I don't want to promote any particular brand of software. So,
okay,
but that's what I had in mind. So, for example, SAP
okay.
IVP has a demand-driven DDMRP module as well. So that's what I meant.
Hmm.
So Anaplan has it,
Okay,
OMP has it, Blue Yonder has it. Many software in for Simio is a simulation. So um,
okay,
many software have it. So you'll if you're going global, you'll need something like this.
okay.
No, but
So, but
that's a very good question. So Milan, does it even have? I mean, I'm sure that it will have impact on how do you do your SNOP. You have
yeah.
your enterprise planning. It will certainly have a lot of impact on that. Can you like point out few impacts on how it will change the way you do the entire enterprise planning or supply planning or demand planning and then SNOP?
Okay.
Yep.
So the demand planning piece does not change.
Okay.
uh, the forecasting piece, demand planning is of course not just
Hmm.
forecasting, it's forecasting plus demand management and sales planning and all of that. The demand planning piece does not change so significantly, let me put it this way, but it's important. Does Forecast will not drive the actual production plan in a
Okay.
DDMRP world. The forecast will drive the sizing of the buffer, the settings of the buffers, the how the average daily usage, certain parameters of a buffer are what is called as a buffer. I haven't talked about buffer, but
Hmm.
buffer is like the is a representative of inventory on hand, on the way, and some adjusted for some demand. um,
Okay.
so it's an important concept in DDMRP. So demand planning will influence the buffers. The SNOP changes because now you are no more creating a what is called as a master production schedule. Every
Okay.
plant right now has a 1 month frozen or a 2 month maybe or at least 1 week frozen schedule, two
Yeah.
weeks that they are going to make on 1st of January, so much of so many items, and 2nd of January so much of everything is frozen. In DDMRP world it's not. So you are going to launch production orders from the raw material side, production orders based on what is being consumed or the finished goods today. So today's what is to be launched today will be decided today. You will, and of course, you'll take maybe 4 days to make it. So, but you won't have much broader, longer frozen horizon. This is a significant change. The other thing is the planned order concept does
Hmm.
no more exist. So
Okay.
the SNOP meetings are really, really much more about buffers and how are the
Okay.
buffers performing and where do I see areas of improvement. Because in the SNOP meetings, buffers clearly, very, very clearly show you exactly, almost exactly where you should be focusing your improvement on. So Pareto principle 80-20, 20% of things cause
Uh-huh.
80%. With buffers, it's more like 99-1. So 1% of things will be able
Okay.
to will cause 99% of the improvements. So again, it's not magic, it's mathematical. Why? Because Pareto principle is really based on a normal distribution curve, independently distributed, identical activities. However, the world of supply chain is interconnected, it's not independent. So one thing can identified can have non-linear effect on other things. So more often than not, just one thing causes 99% of the thing, 99% of the problems, which buffer size would
Interesting.
detect.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can clearly see like how this can help company reduce their market offering lead time than their production lead time for sure. But tell me about it. Like, so is it like calculating the safety stock based on certain rules? Is it similar to safety stock, or
No,
am
it's
I
okay.
totally
So
getting it
the
wrong?
safety stock concept is not there, but there is
Okay.
a equivalent of safety. Now,
Okay.
the buffers, which I said, buffers are meant to protect and absorb variability. They are meant to absorb the bullwhip effect. So safe they buffers calculation has safety built into them. So there's a calculation which of course I won't take our time to go through
Hmm.
the calculations, but buffers sizing of the buffers has that safety, the variability taken into account. So you don't need to calculate the safety stock, you just need to size the buffers.
Okay, so normally, Milan, I mean, we have heard this term buffer. I mean, quite quite a few times. So how are they generally determined? I mean, you mentioned some mathematical formulas. Is it through those formulas it is determined, or how is it?
Yeah, there is a
If you
method
can
to.
like describe it in general terms for our listeners instead of the mathematical formula itself, that would be really helpful. Even for me also,
Yeah,
be
now, yeah,
really
of
helpful.
course I would not get into mathematics. So buffer,
Yeah.
since by definition buffer represents the amount of inventory you would want on hand plus on the way, and minus some some special demand, maybe today's demand or whatever. Therefore buffer would always have your predicted daily consumption rate, predicted, forecasted, which this is where forecast comes in, forecasted daily consumption rate multiplied by, let's say, whatever 7 days it takes for you to get your product on your location. So that's a bare minimum the buffer sites should be, right? Then on top of it you would add some safety which is for variability, and then on top of it you would add, you're never going to order just one unit, you're always going to order some minimal order quantity or some batch size. So you would add that on top of it. This is how
Okay.
buffer size is calculated, roughly speaking, and really computer calculates it every day. You don't have to calculate it. You just have to tell the parameters, and the system will
Okay.
calculate it every day.
So Milan, is this calculated for all the nodes or
No,
specific
not for all
ones?
the nodes. Only
Okay.
for those nodes which will cause you to have a competitive edge. So there are certain factors how you can decide which nodes to have buffers. For example,
Okay.
you will want to have a buffer. Let's say you're manufacturing a complex, a tank manufacturer, ship manufacturer, or whatever you are. Now you would want some buffers near the finished goods. For example, automobile companies would typically want the buffers to be maintained at a component level, so that the final
Mm.
assembly can be made very quickly,
Okay.
so that they don't have to make ready-made cars. They can make yellow car of variant CWZ with the alloy wheels, just in a day, if all of these components are available. So it's best to have buffers at component level in such a case. Now, how did I come at component level? Why? Because your dealers, they might be okay with waiting for a day, which they are, a day or two. So it's best, you, instead of making a full car and then probably you don't have, you'll probably guess that, oh, let's make blue, but then your dealer
Mm.
probably wants yellow. So it's best to have it at a component level, so that you can make it in within the dealer's tolerance time in which he can wait. So just one example. I'm saying how you can decide. There are other
Okay.
factors as well. Does this help?
Yeah, yeah, it does definitely. So, so Milan, I mean, so any discussion about supply chain is incomplete unless you discuss AI and machine learning, at least as of now. So, how do you see the future of DDMRP evolving with this, advancements in AI and machine learning?
Now, here you got me stumped. I, for one,
Yeah.
I would say AIML would come much later in DDMRP world.
Okay.
It's and again, listen to the philosophy which I'm saying. It's
Mm.
people driven. Everything is people driven. Now,
Yeah.
if you have a black box approach, is people do not understand the logic by which
Mm.
the computer is giving them the recommendations, they will stop adopting the system. So, and this is where AI ML uh, has a limited scope in terms of adoption. I don't
Okay.
know how are people going to do. I mean, DDMRP people are going to get AIML into DDMRP
Okay.
somewhere. Well, I can see that in terms of decoupling determination, there is some advanced logic which can help in terms of some of these buffer factors determination. Some advanced logic can help, but the difference is going to be between tweedledee and tweedledum. Yeah. uh,
Okay.
I,
So
I, I
Milan, I mean,
Go ahead.
yeah. So I think in your a question which Anurag asked, like how does a company start? So in this journey, so you mentioned that okay, it starts with imparting at least the knowledge and the idea that okay, what DDMRP is. So just want to understand whether the narrative of DDMRP is different for say a sales supply planning guy, a finance persona, or a say manufacturing persona. So do you think the narrative is different or it's same for all of them?
It's okay. So the goal is same for all of them, and it should be, which is make more and more money, ethically,
Yeah.
of course, without laying off people and without too much of firefighting. So that should be the goal. So
Mm.
finance should always have a superiority, but there is a bit of an
Okay.
education even for finance people. By the way, finance people, they add overhead costs on inventory. Okay,
Mm.
which makes inventories on the asset side. So it boosts profit. So
Mm.
it adding overhead costs on inventory actually encourages production people to make more of that inventory. Why? Because it eventually helps the plant manager to show more profits. So some
Mm.
of that thing has to go away even for finance people. Then in education, even they have to go through that.
Okay.
Stop allocating these overhead costs based on labor hours. It just, what's the point of allocating rent onto a finished goods based on some overhead principles? It just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. Cash flow approaches, variable cost approaches, a lot of management accounting education has to go to even finance people. I'm making a distinction between management accounting and cost accounting. Management accounting
Okay.
is for internal decision making. Cost accounting is about reporting to investors and government. So
Mm.
you can follow whatever rules you want for external people, but for internal people, do not allocate these overhead costs. So anyway, so finance should always be the priority, followed by the salespeople. Now,
Yeah.
and supply chain once should be flexible, and which also means that they should be protected. They can be flexible, but they also need some protection from variability, which is where decoupling point and buffers come.
Mm.
So all the personas are aligned for money making, but the interpretation for each
Mm.
of these would be different because they are different roles. So finance would expect higher ROI, higher profit. Sales would expect more happier customers, no more firefighting, no more arguing with production guy. Hey, make that uh, ginger shampoo instead of the other one. So and so there'll be much more collaboration, and with production people, much less firefighting, much smoother, higher efficiency eventually. Not even high, but at least effectiveness. Efficiency follows effectiveness, not the other way around.
Yeah. So Milan, I mean, as what I have understood is like it's more about your thought process. So just want to understand what are some of the challenges that companies might face in the future. When they are trying to implement DDMRP. Of course, change management is one of them. And so how do you think that they can prepare them? Because when you talk about the financial terms, you are talking about make more money, right? So for the sales people, there can be incentives provided to them, right? Okay, if your sales increases, you get bonus or xyz.
Mhm.
But how do you put that into the mind of, say, a manufacturing shop floor person who might not get that benefit of increase in sales? Of course, indirectly they do get, but no direct benefit that they can see. How do you sort of balance this two?
Okay. So the metrics for production and execution people, well, they're the ones making and purchasing, is
Yeah.
adherence. So there's a process which will be put in place, and there are certain dashboards which are called as signal integrity dashboards. It's basically an adherence. Production people need to adhere to the process, as long as if their adherence is near above 90% or 95%, you can give them a bonus, irrespective of whatever the sales is happening.
Okay.
So for example, if there is a buffer signal saying to produce 200 quantity, and they produced and start producing 200 today, and they produce 250 tomorrow, well, that's not adherence.
Hmm.
So as long as they're adhering to what the signals is saying, 200 to be production today, should be start production today. If they are doing that much, they should be awarded.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I have one question, Milan, here. So we did discuss about the buffer stock and how it can be calculated for the businesses, various discussions which we have. Just one question which comes to my mind, doesn't it increase the inventory carrying cost for them? And how do you then optimize on it?
So why would you say the inventory would go up?
Because we are keeping buffer. I'm sure there are mathematics which will consider a lot of things to develop that particular buffer, but typically the balance between your inventory stock which you need to keep and the demand which would come is very hard to find sometimes. So that's why
Oh,
I want to
okay, so
understand
let me
your
give you
view on
two
that.
answers to that. So one of the
Okay.
things which I said early in this conversation was the inventory turns improves after
Okay.
DDMRP
Okay.
implementation.
Ah. Mm,
So which basically means either sales goes up significantly for the same inventory, or the inventory goes down. So therefore the results
mm-hmm.
are such that inventory actually goes down very significantly. Now you but you had this question, why? Because you think buffers are being introduced and therefore the inventory should go up.
Yeah.
Now buffers are being introduced as a model. The reality is and the model is basically more of a demand driven approach. So
Okay.
the net
Hmm.
effect is, even though if you're even though you're introducing a buffer, and by the way, there's plenty of inventory even now in a non DDMRP world on non buffered
Right.
positions. Plenty, it's crazy. So
Mm,
by introducing certain points where they should be managed by buffers, you you're just managing certain positions by buffers in a demand driven approach. The inventory rest of the places goes down extremely significantly, and even the inventory at the buffer also goes down, but it's a buffered position, so maybe it doesn't go down as much as you think it might. But that's fine. The net inventory reduction is phenomenal between buffered and
okay.
non-buffered positions.
All right. No, that's certainly helpful. At least I have gained a lot from what you have just described. So my view has also changed. I'll certainly go back, do my homework, and learn about this in detail. So, what would be your advice to supply chain professionals like me who is looking for any transition or to learn more about DDMRP in that case?
Okay, so I'd say start getting curious, which you maybe you are now. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
don't dive so quickly into the mechanics and a DDI course so immediately. Don't go for that so
Okay.
quickly.
Hmm.
Um, Strengthen your own case for why DD. Why should you even study DDMRP now? Which basically means go to find out from Google. But one of the best places is this website called a demand-driven-institute.com. If you go there, you'll find so many testimonials and cases and videos of real people and not consultants, the users and the supply chain practitioners
Yeah.
saying the results they got, and they'll take you through them. So first of all, build your own convictions that this really works. Right now you've just heard me, so it's a second hand. Not
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
Build your own convictions, validate whatever I have said, that these testimonials really do exist, and then start the journey of education, and which is again also
Okay.
available from the DDI website. There are, you know, planning courses, there are books, but the easiest things are these courses, because an instructor teaching you will also teach you lots of examples, anecdotes, examples, real world, his own experience. Um, so, but I'll say start with, no, going through these testimonials and real examples.
Okay. So Milan, when you were saying that, okay, I just became curious, as in what was your starting point and then your journey, and like how did you get into DDMRP, and when was that, you know, say that eureka
All
moment,
right. Now
right?
that's let me try and answer this. So this flow world, this flow driven world, so demand driven approach. Um, all the founders of demand driven methodology are also from the world called as theory of constraints. If you have heard
Okay.
of theory of constraints,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
I was initiated into the theory of constraints world long back, and that was by luck. I found um, a legendary consultant in India, um, and I kiss the ground on which he walks. I practically worship him. He's my guru. He's my and that's under his shadow is where I saw the magic happening. I met him. He inspired me. He gave me some of these examples. He let me attend some of his classes, and I in fact attended few of his classes as a normal paid participant as well, so that I am free to ask any questions. He grilled me and he taught me, and he's been very nice. And that's how it started. And he showed me the world, and he showed me what are the possibilities. So the advantage which I had was of a great person as my guide, and that happened by luck. I will give myself no credit for it.
Okay. So Milan, it's full of suspense. I mean, like at least I am interested to know who is that person, if you can
I
name
don't have
or.
the permission to mention the
Oh,
name.
okay, okay, okay. All right.
No, but it's good that for our listeners, you can be that person. So if you can just
Exactly.
tell the listeners how can they reach out to you in case they have certain questions around this, that would
LinkedIn.
be really great.
I'm on LinkedIn,
Okay.
and I'm happy. I'm very happy. My connect is also on Demand Driven Institute website. I'm a
Okay.
DDMRP instructor amongst a few in India, um,
Sure.
and yeah, and uh, my contacts are there. Feel free to reach out,
Perfect.
and happy to help. No charge, as long as you're not calling me at your place.
Okay. And I'm very sure, Milan, after listening to you, I think our listener would be thinking about bringing you to their place. I mean, that's how their company can start their journey in DDMRP, right? So I think at least I found it very helpful, this discussion, and I'm very sure our listeners would have benefited from it. So listeners, you can reach out to Milan in LinkedIn. He's there, and then he's very active in LinkedIn as well. And then also he mentioned the Demand Driven Institute, right? So that's the place where you can go and then just look into the any case studies or resources that you can find there. That would be helpful if you encounter any questions or any doubts. Then I think Milan is always there to help you out. And I think with that we can do a closure, Anurag, right?
Yeah,
It was a
yeah. And
yeah.
and it was a really insightful session, Milan. Thanks for coming up.
Yeah, yeah. And Milan, I think as you mentioned, right? So start of the conversation, DDMRP is so huge that okay, wrapping it up in a single hour long session might not be sufficient. If required, we can we can have you again in our podcast at a later point in time. But I think this session has been immensely helpful for us.
And this is just the start, I think, Milan.
Yeah,
We'll surely, it will not be the last for sure. We'll have you again.
yeah,
Thanks for having me, Anurag and Partha. You guys are wonderful. You guys grilled me, so but I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much.
yeah. Same here, Milan. Thank you so much. Thank you, listener, for tuning in today. Thank you.